The following is an exclusive presentation of Cablevision local programming. TV that's close to home.
Democratic Speaker of the House, Representative Jim Amann of the 118th District in Milford, next on Cablevision's Meet the Leaders. And welcome to Cablevision's Meet the Leaders. I'm David Smith, and our guest today is Speaker of the House, Democrat Jim Amann of the 118th District, representing Milford. Good to have you with us on Meet the Leaders, Mr.
Nice
Speaker.
to be here.
Welcome. To the
Always
program.
nice to be with you.
Well, here we are. We're after the shortened session. Special session is a little bit of a question mark at this point. But this year has been an interesting one, certainly, and it's been a little bit of a concerning one financially for the state of Connecticut, of course, with what started out to be a huge surplus and then the Great Disappearing Act based on the economy.
You know, Dave, early on I did predict, there was a lot of folks, the Republican caucus, the Senate Democratic caucus, even the governor were talking about spending the surplus money. I know that our House Democratic press conference, we talked about making sure that we are careful, that we make sure that fiscally our tights, our belts will be tightened, because we had a feeling that the surplus we had might disappear. We were correct. We were the first ones to call it, and though we are in deficit right now, we are in very good shape. The governor and ourselves have worked for the last 3 years to prepare for this rainy day. It's certainly not pouring out yet. But it's starting to rain, and the governor and the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats decided that the best thing to do was stick with the budget that we have. And people, when I hear my great friends on the other side of the aisle call it a do-nothing budget, well, these are the guys that talk about tax and spending. The facts is the budget that they supported last year, which is the one we support this year, is the one that we are all together on. Spends $838 million than the previous year, than last year, a 4% increase. So if anybody's tax and spend, they're saying that this isn't enough. It must be our Republican colleagues. Certainly, suddenly there's amnesia that somehow this budget wasn't good enough. The same budget that these same Republicans and the governor and ourselves called historic. Historic amount of money for health care, historic amount of money for education. Suddenly during the political season, it's not good enough. They call it a do-nothing. In reality, the Republicans' plan, which came after the fact, a scheme to try to make political hay, is quite frankly, in reality, a do-something-dumb budget. It doesn't balance. It spends money. It's declining revenues in a time, talking about declining our revenues when we're in time of deficits. That's why we have a problem nationally, too, with the Republican Party, because they continue to have these sort of ideas of creating more deficits. We have been responsible with the governor. This was a great budget, one that we all called historic, and we're very happy with it. And it's exactly what the taxpayers want, no tax increase, and basically making sure we're not going to overspend in the time of the economy where we're all hurting.
Well, now, we are going into deficit spending, or at least a deficit, that will be countered by the rainy day fund?
Yes, we have about $1.4 billion in our rainy day fund. We prepared ourselves very, very well for this time. Plus the governor, at part of our agreement with the governor on this budget, that she also has rescinding power up to 3%. Now that might not sound much, but you put 3% in a $18 billion budget, that's a lot of money. She's already doing it. She's starting to cut back on gasoline for some of the travel, for the automobiles. She's cut back on any unnecessary travel. She's slowly taking a leadership role, as the governor should in these times. I trust the governor to make the right decisions. It's bipartisan trust between the governor and the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats, and we believe she'll do the job and make the right decisions.
Well, to that end, there has been a lot of bipartisan work in this last shortened session. Certainly the global warming
Absolutely.
bill was one where everybody came together
Right.
and really came out in favor of it. And it really was, talk about landmark, that was pretty much landmark legislation. Only, what, 4 or 5 states in the country?
Correct. And global warming was a big victory. In fact, unfortunately, our national politicians failed to pass a bill just yesterday. So yes, what the public should know is, though the rhetoric and the partisanship and the politics is happening in election year, we all know that.
Sure.
In reality, if you look at the General Assembly, in my 18 years, I'm very proud of the time I served. The best legislation that we do in Hartford is when we do sit down and put our party labels down and actually work together. Global warming is a prime example of it. There's been a lot of pieces of legislation that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that I introduced over the years that were very supportive of those ideas. And I think the people really like to see us, again, work together and get things done. 92% of the time is the average that we actually vote the same. It's the 8% difference that the people hear about out there in the public. And like some people say, you know, I wish it had that kind of positive 92% agreement with my own spouse, right? So, I mean, we don't do too bad as people think, but the 8% of the time is what the newspapers and the radio and TV talk about. They really sometimes don't talk a lot about the victories like global warming, where we actually work together.
I guess that's what makes party politics sometimes.
Makes party politics, drives citizens crazy sometimes, but on the other hand, you can't beat democracy and you can't beat freedom in America. So if we get a little tired, just turn off the dial. Don't turn off the channel or meet the leaders.
No. Whatever you do.
At least now on David's side.
That's right. You mentioned driving, and boy, does that bring up a concern that we all, politicos, regular citizens, whatever, not only in the state of Connecticut, but certainly around this whole globe of ours, are dealing with, is the horrendous situation regarding petrol prices,
Right.
gasoline, diesel fuel, oil for the winter upcoming, which is a very scary thought for a lot of people. What are we able to do in the state of Connecticut? It is bigger than just the state of Connecticut, obviously, the pricing.
It's global, and people have to understand that this is not the end of it. And it really annoys me when I see politicians on both sides of the aisle trying to appease people that somehow there's some golden stake out there that's going to be driven into this problem and solved. The only way you're going to solve it, we don't have a national policy right now for energy, one that really exists. They give us states direction. We can't control what's happening in the markets. We can't control supply and demand. We can tad back home though. So what can we do ourselves? And a couple of things that we hope that's going to happen. We'll make a prediction in special session that's coming up and see if we were successful or not, because this show will air after the special session. One it would be is to at least give some sort of discount at the pumps for folks where they can shop. So, if you can save a nickel or 10 cents by paying cash, you should have that option as a consumer. That's something we can do, and we're going to do it hopefully in special session so folks can save a few pennies. The gross receipts tax, though I think it's bad policy, and I want to explain myself there. We do not have tolls here, but the media focuses in on how we're the highest tax. And I understand that, but you know what? That tax is paying for it. Remember that transportation problem we have?
Yes, we
2005, the #1 issue? Well, finally, you have a gross receipts tax that's paying for it. And the jeopardy of freezing that tax jeopardizes two things. A, it causes a deficit, because it is a revenue gain that it pays for something, for a change here in the state of Connecticut. And what we meant it to pay for is the new trains, the new roads, the new bridges, Fix It First program to make sure our bridges are safe and our roads. But we don't have tolls. So if you compare our high gas price, our taxes, with our no tolls versus other states such as New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, for example, or even California, add the tolls to their gas tax, believe me, we would be very competitive. I don't want to see tolls in the state of Connecticut, but people have to be told the truth. And that tax is paying for something. Not like the old saying politicians told you about the lottery money. They remember that one? Lottery money, you give us the lottery, we'll put all the money into education. Never happened.
This is dedicated
This is a dedicated fund.
to
The
transportation.
casino money, oh, it's going to pay, we're going to make sure
Right.
it goes back to the municipalities for town road aid. That never happened. And the other one was ECS money. We promise you that if we pass this bill, every town will get 50% funding. We know that that's false. Here's a revenue source now that we've committed now, going into its 4th year. As soon as there's a little political heat, everybody wants to draw the tent over their head and hide and say, just freeze it. The problem with that is, since we started talking about freezing this 5-cent tax increase, the price has gone up 13 cents in the pumps. You'll never see it. But what we do lose on that is we create more of a deficit, about $25 million of deficit that somehow you're going to pay for anyways as a taxpayer. And it's not being dedicated to what we're trying to do and fix our roads, which is our roadmap to our economic future here in Connecticut. Something has to pay for roads. I'd rather look a person in the eye and say, that's what it's paying for, folks. And if you don't want it, then you're going to get tolls, or they're going to tax you somewhere else, or we're going to have the roads to nowhere that are going to be locked up in traffic, and it's going to kill us even more economically.
Is there any way to freeze that as opposed to having it an escalating
That's exactly
percentage?
what we're doing. We're freezing it. Again, I don't think it's a good idea, but because of I think it's symbolic, and politicians that are weak-kneed, that basically don't want to look the person in the eye and say we shouldn't be doing this because it is bad policy. They'll never see it at the pump, but we're going to do it. We're going to predict that we will freeze it, but again, that freeze could cause a deficit. The freeze could cause the future of tolls. The freeze can jeopardize our transportation system. That's what the facts are. Not trying to put a nickel back in your pocket, which is 2 Phillips a week if you do. That's 10 cents. Do the math times 52 weeks. That's what you're going to save per person out there versus what we could do for the transportation system. It'll probably be frozen, but I do like the idea of cash discounts. That to me is real, where a person can say, this guy's charging me $4.32, this guy's charging me $4.25, guess where I'm going? I'm going to the guy for $4.25 and I'll put my cash down. That's real and substantive, and hopefully we'll predict that we will pass that.
This is one of the predictions, and I'm hoping it works better than some of the guys who are doing that sort of thing, some of the independents, because some of them are starting off at about where the charge credits are.
Right.
And you don't see any discount effectively.
Right. Now that's the other
It's a little
serious.
gimmick.
There's another serious problem we have out there is trying to, that little state of Connecticut's going to control this global problem. Now, and the second thing is little Connecticut going to be out there, Consumer Protection, the Attorney General checking every pump from Fairfield County to Litchfield County. It's going to be very difficult, but hopefully the ones with the good reputations, the ones that are real. People aren't dumb. They'll see through it fast, and they know when they save a few bucks and when they don't. I do like that idea of a cash discount. We should do more of encouraging that. Beyond that, as far as what can we do in Connecticut, what we've been trying to do is tell people that this is not going to end. Start carpooling. Get your bicycle out. Use the train. This is what we've been encouraging anyways in the state of Connecticut. Europe is a prime example. Go to Europe, look at their train systems. They're efficient, they're clean, and people use them. And guess what? They can get from A to B. That's what we need to do here in Connecticut. We need more mass transit, as we've been working on investing in. We need to fix up the roads we have now, which we've been doing. We have to make sure they continue to be safe. Our bridges, which we were way before that horrible tragedy that happened in Minnesota. We have already been inspecting our bridges and investing in those. That's what we need to do in Connecticut. The other thing is to increase encourage businesses, as we did with Hollywood East, of coming in and creating new jobs and green-collar jobs. And that's in biodiesel, which we're working on with UConn and other universities, and very successful. Fuel cell, the only fuel cell that's basically on the space shuttle is a Connecticut fuel cell. 3 new companies that have been picked by DPUC. One been chosen by General Motors to create that new fuel cell car. We have buses that are running strictly on fuel cells from UTC. We have buses in New Haven, Utah, running on the fat from McDonald's hamburger grease. Those are the inventive and creative ways that are going to get us from our big tie of oil. Those days are over. That is history. What we need to do is where we're going as a nation and as a state for the future, and investing in these small and growing companies and energy companies is going to be our freedom, finally, from big oil.
Not going to be happening overnight, is it?
No, it's not going to happen overnight.
We
That's
all
why
have to
you
pull together on
at
it.
least start carpooling or get on the train, use our bus services. We are expanding bus services all over the state now. We're getting our rail lines better where they can go now up to Springfield. We're working on that, where you can go from Fairfield County all the way up to New London now. We're working on that, the intermodal systems. We're about 50 years behind where we should be, but finally we're recognizing that if we're going to have an economic future free from petroleum, then we have no choice but to do these things now.
We want
And
to
it's
thank
actually
you very
exciting.
It should be, and anybody who's paying those gas prices has got to get excited about that
Absolutely. I
mass
just
transit
paid
scenario.
$71 before I came here today.
I
That was
think
an eye opener.
we're going to put in cash machines at the various gas stations if that cash discount comes through.
Right.
All
There was
right.
a gentleman yesterday, and it was on ABC, and they were talking how this guy already can take your car with some sort of diesel initiative with a biodiesel in any car and can double your mileage. He had a Hummer that got 26 miles per gallon.
Good grief.
And the technology's there, so that's the other thing. We need to get these inventive, creative ideas out to the market. The first thing that General Motors said about it, well, it's not as easy as that. Well, this guy's doing it, and even Arnold Schwarzenegger actually had a vehicle, went over and had one of his vehicles done by him. So the genius is out there. What we need to do is invest in the genius and make sure that we move forward as a nation, because we're not going to survive if we continue the way we're going right now.
Listen, we've got to take a quick break here.
Sorry.
We are speaking with Speaker Jim Amann, and we've got more coming up as we look back and look forward, as a matter of fact. A little bit of predicting going on with the Democratic Speaker of the House, Jim Amann, on Cablevision's Meet the Leaders. We'll be right back.
Explore her grandeur. Appreciate her beauty. Protect her for tomorrow. Recycle your old rechargeable batteries. Call 877-2RECYCLE or visit us online at calltorecycle.org.
Alan Babin chose to serve his country as an airborne combat medic. He was critically wounded in Iraq when he rushed to help an injured soldier.
That was my job, and I was there to do it.
Alan will require daily care for the rest of his life. Paralyzed Veterans of America, helping veterans get all the benefits they've earned.
If I could do it over again, I would.
Paralyzed Veterans of America. To help, visit pva.org.
Does it scare you to know that bed bugs are real? Or that termites cause billions of dollars in property damage? Or that cockroaches and mice contribute to asthma? Well, what should really scare you is not knowing these things. Because when you don't know what you're dealing with, household pests are a lot scarier than they should be. Learn more at pestworld.org.
From Olympic gold to mother of two, Mia Hamm's challenge these days is her twin daughter's nutrition.
What I've learned is that your baby needs the big three nutrients. The first two you probably heard of, folic acid and calcium with vitamin D. A lesser-known nutrient is DHA. It's an omega-3 fatty acid that's important for your baby's brain, heart, and eye development.
You can get DHA in fish or through food, supplements, or infant formula fortified with a vegetarian source of DHA. Learn more at thebig3.org.
And we are back. Welcome back to Cablevision's Meet the Leaders. I'm David Smith. We are continuing our discussion with Jim Amann, the Democratic Speaker of the House. And we've been talking a little bit about energy policy, a little bit about mass transportation and so forth, a little bit about the realities of the budget that will be covered, the deficit of which
Yes.
gets covered by the rainy day fund at what point?
July 1st, some of it kicks in, but again, the governor also has powers that we gave the executive branch, where she can have going through these accounts, and she can do some rescinding and cutting. As I said, she's already started doing that in some areas, and again, I have confidence in the governor and the rainy day fund that we'll get out of this this year, and I believe by the end of the year we'll probably still have some rainy day money left, and hopefully the economy does look a little bit more promising by the end of the year in the first quarter for, I should say the second quarter, I guess. It looks like there's a little bit of room for '09, so I think '09 we'll see a little bit better than where we are today.
You talked a little bit about bridge inspections and so forth, and that's something that's gone the way of the dodo in the minds of most people today, because we really haven't had a crisis in the last few months, and everybody's worried about gas prices and budgets and all kinds of things like that. How are we doing in the inspection process?
Not only budget-wise is Connecticut holding their own, and job-wise compared to the rest of the nation, we're in pretty good shape. A program that I put into effect last year before the Minnesota bridge collapse, we were again head of the curve, called Fix It First program. America, Dave, right now, what made us strong was the way that we built our roads. As Rome said, as the roads go, your economy and the strength of your nation, and that's certainly been true for America. And our infrastructure, certainly when the turn of the century in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, and building our roads and those sort of things and our bridges, nobody could have touched what we did. The problem is we've let a lot of that erode. Our infrastructure in America right now is in very bad shape, and we have to make some decisions that, as important it is to invest in healthcare and education, our infrastructure for our economy is the most important thing we need to do to survive as a superpower. We are the only remaining superpower left in the world, and that's in jeopardy right now, especially with growing nations such as China, Brazil, India, and many others like that. So we have to make a decision. We did it in Connecticut. We made a decision to fix it first. I would have liked to have seen $300 million investment, but negotiations was negotiated down to $150 million. The governor only wanted 75. So we were convinced to meet somewhere in the middle. And the program is out there looking at our bridges. There's 10 bridges right now in Connecticut, 3 of which were actually in worse shape than the one in Minnesota. We were just lucky that we were able to recognize that before there was any serious problems, and we are out there getting them done. The problem that we have here is bureaucracy. We know these bridges are unsafe. We have a Department of Transportation that I think has had 9 commissioners in the last 6 or 7 years. You can't operate in a state when you have that kind of bureaucracy and those sort of problems. The Department of Transportation have some excellent workers there. We need them. We need our state workers to be able to do their job. When we had the retirement, we lost a lot of our top-notch engineers. We need to plug those folks back in. And if you're going to have a good infrastructure, you need to hire the proper people, and it's going to cost us money to do so. But long-term, those long-term investments will give us what I told you, a roadmap to Connecticut's economic future. I-95 is the most important corridor in the state of Connecticut because of its proximity to New York City. We need, as we did today, trying to drive here, it took me probably 20 minutes more than it should have. Maybe I should have taken the train today too. So we need our rail lines, our bus lines, but we need an infrastructure too that can get to point A and B in a proper time, and we're starting to work on all these things now, and I think within the next decade you'll see a huge difference in the state of Connecticut if we don't continue to delay. The governor, though I think wants to see a good transportation program, unfortunately it's piecemeal and it's step by step. We need to have a bold plan. We've been talking about it since 1996. Every day we delay costs the taxpayers more money. The sooner we can get this done and build up these roads and bridges in our ports, and certainly get our rail cars in that we're all looking forward to in '09, the better for all of us and for the economy.
But to the end of money and costing more, healthcare is certainly one of those aspects that has been of great concern nationally and certainly in the state of Connecticut. And healthcare for smaller companies in particular that are feeling the heat. We're asking you to look into your crystal ball a little bit. As we suggested, some of these are predictions, some of these are reflections on what's gone on. What do you think about this tying health cares together?
Well, actually, in the last couple of years, you've seen the state of Connecticut again. Last year, one of the things we did was called historic, and that was our investment in healthcare, besides education, but healthcare. We gave the first reimbursements back to doctors that they've had since 1989. A lot of those doctors who deal with husky patients were not dealing with these husky patients because they were not getting properly reimbursed for their effort. And that might sound cruel or mean or whatever. The bottom line is doctors' offices are businesses. So they needed those reimbursements to have a way to pay for all those people that work in a doctor's office.
Well, it hasn't changed in 10 or 15 years.
Oh, yeah, since 1989, actually.
Yeah.
So we put an investment there. We had Healthy Kids Connecticut was a program that I initiated. There were 70-some odd thousand kids without insurance. And we just had a report came back that 12,000 kids more are now covered. Now, why does that make a difference to a taxpayer? Because, as we talked earlier about a visit to an emergency room, a lot of those kids that don't have access or affordability to insurance end up in an emergency room. Those emergency rooms cost a lot of money, 6 times the cost versus if we give them preventive medicine, which means they go get a checkup by a doctor. They find out that he has a flu. They find out that he has a problem with his teeth. He gets to a dental care. Those are preventive care, which is a lot cheaper than letting a problem go for a period of time, ending up in a facility as a primary care, which ends up in an emergency room, which is 6 times the cost. So we've been very, very successful. The bill that we did this year, it's called a pooling bill. Some people like it, some people, the concept, some don't. I'm one that looks for many ideas for affordability, accessibility, personal responsibility in your own health care, and those sort of things. Will the pooling bill be passed or will it be vetoed by the governor? I predict that she will veto it. But at that veto, what I need to challenge the governor on is what is her solution? Because as you know, it's a serious problem. Healthy Kids was a good start. We focused in on the kids, but as you know, David, there's a lot of adults, small businesses out there that just can't afford it and go and risk themselves with no insurance. That also costs taxpayers money, because if you go to a hospital, if you have a heart attack, they're not going to throw you out of the hospital. They still have to take care of you, and if you are uninsured, guess who pays for it? We as taxpayers will end up paying for that.
If it gets vetoed,
money.
will it be passed in the next session, do you think?
I think, again, we were very successful with the kids portion of it. It's trying to grasp this bigger solution of parents, of small businesses. I think it has to be led by a national policy. I do not believe a fully government-run program is the solution, nor do I believe what we have right now is a purely business-run is working. You need a national program, and it's some sort of hybrid between government and companies to work together to find these solutions for an affordability of healthcare.
Watch this space for more. We'll keep you up to date. Now, you have mentioned the governor on a number of occasions, and that's something that you'd like to hear a little closer to home, that designation of governor. You've had an exploratory committee out. You've been going far and wide, getting response from people. How have things been going in your quest?
It's been a lot of fun, David, and I think most people that do run for an office are very encouraged when they're out there and they're talking to people and you're sharing your ideas. I have been very surprised about the support that I've already gained, and I think that's part of what I've tried to do as the Speaker of the House and as an elected official my whole 25 years that I've been involved in local and state politics, is to try to create win-wins. Now, I have the sheet metal workers already, the iron workers, we have the carpenters, many groups like that out there. But yet, I also today am going to be endorsed by a couple Chamber of Commerces and those sort of things. So it shows you that I have the working class folks out there, the blue collar jobs, the union support, but also business. Now, how does that happen? It's because the reputation I have is that I listen to both sides and I find compromise. I create win-win situations instead of win-lose, and that's the most important thing that we need to do.
We're going to be talking a lot more about this as time goes on, obviously, but it's so good to have you with us. We
David,
really
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank all your good works as Speaker and all your years in the House of Representatives.
It's been an honor, Dave.
We
Thank
do
you.
appreciate it. And of course, if you'd like to contact the Speaker, you can do that too. We've got the information on how to get a hold of him. There it is, James Amann, Pope's Island Road, Milford. Phone numbers locally as well as at the Capitol. And you can contact him. He's more than interested in hearing from you. And of course, if you have some comments, questions, or suggestions for the program, we'd love to hear from you as well. What you do is emailing us at mtlct@cablevision.com. And there it is for you too. That's about all the time we have for this go-round. Always great to see you. We want to thank you. Always want to thank you too. Join us anytime as you'd like to, and of course you can watch the show again whenever you'd like to on Cablevision's Video on Demand, only on Cablevision, never on Phone Company TV or anywhere else for that matter. For Cablevision's Meet the Leaders, I'm David Smith. Good to have you with us, and we'll see you next time.